What if I told you one of the wealthiest and most financially conservative nations on earth is now being pushed to add Bitcoin to its central bank balance sheet? On the same day that ARK Invest just happened to increase its 2030 Bitcoin price target to an eye-watering $2.4 million per coin. And one of our guests today made a similar seven-figure Bitcoin price call last year. Switzerland, nearly $1 trillion in GDP, over 900 billion in central bank assets, is under massive pressure to make a strategic Bitcoin allocation. And this isn't just coming from internet hype and you and I spurring people on to do it. It's coming from Lucius Messer, or Meiser, a respected economist and co-founder of the Bitcoin Association of Switzerland, who made a public call for the Swiss National Bank to embrace Bitcoin. I'm going to bring up my screen here, and we're going to take a quick look at what he had to say on the topic. Let's listen.
In such times, society needs resilient institutions like the Swiss National Bank. And here, I want to point out a fundamental difference to other speakers. The green activists want you to support their agenda. They distract the Swiss National Bank from its mission. The Bitcoin initiative, in contrast, seeks to support the National Bank by providing it with a monetary tool for the digital age. How is that? Bitcoin is a special asset. I have to admit, it might not be worth much in scenarios that most of you consider normal. However, Bitcoin can be worth a lot in the specific scenario of a multipolar world order with fading trust in government debt. The high price of gold and Bitcoin is the market signal to tell us that this scenario is not unlikely. In economic terms, Bitcoin resembles an arrow security named after the Nobel Prize winner Kenneth Arrow. And as anyone with a formal education in portfolio theory knows, the question is not whether to hold an arrow security, it's how much should be held. I leave it to the competent employees at the Swiss National Bank to figure out the right amount. But I'm pretty sure that it is higher than the 1,000 Bitcoin you already hold indirectly through shares of companies that have Bitcoins. If you want our help with these considerations, we stand at your disposal.
Interesting words there. Imagine the signal this would send to the world. We're watching game theory unfold in real time at the level of nations. If Switzerland were to make a move, it wouldn't just flip the script. It could trigger a global scramble for Bitcoin unlike we've ever seen. And that lights the fuse on Bitcoin's next explosive leg up. I know there's going to be people in the chat that are saying, well, they're not super keen on it with the actual national bank and what they've said. So let's just kind of take a look at what they've said versus what they've done. So really quick, Swiss National Bank chief dismisses Bitcoin reserve calls, basically saying that they're dismissing the calls. They're saying that the chairman, cryptocurrency cannot currently fulfill the requirements for our currency reserves. And meanwhile, you've got people saying holding Bitcoin makes more sense as the world shifts towards multipolar order. So there's kind of arguments on both sides. But either way, the chief of the Swiss National Bank has been very, very dismissive. However, they've been stacking the hell out of MicroStrategy. So they are getting exposure to it. And it's not just, when they got up to, this was late last year, they've got somewhere in the realm 466,000 shares. You get these reports quarterly. So this would have been back in September, the previous quarter. But then they've just released the latest, and they're now up to 517,000 shares of MicroStrategy. So they're making moves. To me, it seems like they want the exposure without explicitly going out and directly buying Bitcoin. In terms of the price call from ARK, I mentioned that at the beginning. They did raise that up from, I believe, a previous 1.2 million per Bitcoin up to, or sorry, where was it? I lost it here. They were in the realm of, I think, 1.5, somewhere around there. And then they moved it up to their 2.4 call. Part of that accounting for Bitcoin that are assumed to be missing. And finally, Adam, I was alluding to you last year. You said if the strategic Bitcoin reserve happens, you're pretty pumped about the idea of 7-figure Bitcoin. So, Adam, maybe I'll toss the question to you first. One, how likely do you think it is that we start to see either Switzerland or other countries begin to actually look at this as an asset on an actual central bank balance sheet? And two, do you see all of the dominoes kind of lined up to begin this kind of global Bitcoin grab on this nation state level? Bitcoin Well is the best place to be buying and selling Bitcoin in Canada and the US. And now with Bitcoin Well Infinite, it's also the best place to be making large buys at their OTC desk of over $50,000. Their white glove service gives you fast transactions, no slippage, and the lowest fees. You can scan the QR code on the screen or simply head to bitcoinwell.com/BTC Sessions to sign up today. And you can share your own personalized referral link to earn commissions.
Yeah, so my mother is from Zurich, and so I spent some time in Switzerland. I thought about getting a Swiss passport as possible. I still might try to do that. And I was talking to the guys that are doing the referendum because part of what's going on, what they're quoting is a fresh run at having a national referendum to require the Swiss National Bank to do that, because they have very direct democracy. If you get enough signatures, you can force a referendum to repeal a law or introduce a law, and then they don't really have any choice. So it's about popular support, actually. It's not, so it's more like the people tell the government what to do, and they have to do it. So now the other interesting bit of context is the Swiss franc was, people remember 1970 in the US, like got off the gold standard, but the Swiss franc got off the gold standard in the year 2000, like shockingly recent, right? So they're familiar with hard money. They like cash. It's a very strong economy. The Swiss economy is generally top of the world economic efficiency ratings, low unemployment, low interest rates, et cetera, right? And the Swiss franc is generally very strong versus anything else, all the other major currencies. So it's quite interesting, of the stronger respected economies with respected banking regulators, et cetera, I'd say it's probably our best shot is the Swiss going for it, right? And so really the question is how much support is there for doing it in Switzerland? And now they did have a referendum, I don't know, probably 5 years ago or something, to reintroduce the gold backing, but it didn't pass quite. So now they're taking another run at it, now that Bitcoin has been around for longer, and to see if they can do it with gold and Bitcoin. So the other interesting thing about Switzerland is the Swiss National Bank is like very economically proficient. They're smart money managers. It's like basically a very highly successful hedge fund. And they own about 150 billion of US equities, which are disclosed by the SEC. So when you say MicroStrategy, I think you were looking at that report, which shows about 1% of their US stock allocations in MicroStrategy. And of course, they've got other things. I think the M2 money supply of Switzerland is about a bit over $1 trillion Swiss francs, which would be 10-15% more in US dollars, because it's overtaken the dollar over the last few years. It used to be below a dollar, now it's over. So anyway, lots of interesting things going on with there, where even and in the process of doing the referendum, they have to try and get signatures from a lot of people, and it will be in the national news, and of course people think about it, and it generates a bunch of positive media about Bitcoin. And of course you've got the US discussion of the sovereign Bitcoin reserve, so it's good timing because they got that to reference as well. And there are actual sovereign reserves, for example, Abu Dhabi, one of their sovereign wealth funds, what about 450 million of Bitcoin. So there's a lot of momentum. So it'd be good for them if they did it. We'll see if they actually do it.
What does that do to Bitcoin? If I know that they've got to have a referendum. That I don't know how easily they'll be able to sell Bitcoin and gold, but you know, as time goes on, that Overton window shifts, and so when that tipping point happens, and not just small countries, but countries like Switzerland start actually saying, "Hey, we need allocation here." Like, what does that do to Bitcoin, and how quickly?
Well, I mean, I think the Overton window has definitely shifted compared to a couple of years ago. I mean, starting with the spot ETFs, which, you know, they were reluctantly granted, right? The Grayscale, I think it was, had to take them to court to get them to do the right thing. But now it's all systems change, right? With the new US administration, they are fixing up all that stuff quickly. New SEC chair. A lot of that government is stacked with Bitcoin friendly and enthusiastic people. And, you know, the fact that they're talking about a sovereign reserve is itself moving the Overton window, and that you got favorable regulations. So I think that actually matters to different types of institutions, the financial institutions that might adopt Bitcoin, like pension funds, endowments, sovereign wealth funds, because, you know, we're into Bitcoin. We like it for the bearer currency. So the average sort of Bitcoiner probably doesn't care too much about the establishment, but it matters to the other establishment that it's a kind of seal of legitimacy or something, like somebody important in their world saying you can trust this now. So I think, and they also, you know, there's FOMO and they look at each other as well, right? So if one respected entity does it, the next one's more likely to do it. And so you've got some good names who are pretty far into Bitcoin, like Fidelity was quite early, right? And a number of other players. So things happen. And the other fun thing is the institutional adoption is a bit slow. So they'll do something, but then they've got to, you know, have some financial institution with millions of retail investors, and they'll say, yeah, we're gonna make it available, we're going to put it in our managed funds or something, but it'll take them 6 months to do the training materials and write the policies and stuff. So you hear the news and nothing much is happening, but eventually all this stuff will land and it'll start to snowball, I think.
I want to jump up to Eric as well. I'd love to hear your take on the fact that this is even being discussed on a global stage. You know, would you have believed seeing stuff like this 4 or 5 years ago?
No, and I think it's happening in a like backwards way from how I expected things would naturally occur. and that's great. But yeah, I expected these types of events to be happening around 2030. I expected, you know, much smaller economies to be showing interest, and for the Overton window to take much longer to shift around all of this. From a sovereign standpoint, what's holding it back is just really characteristics that improve as it gets adopted more and more, and the depth of liquidity within the capital market itself, and then the stability and volatility of the asset over time. I mean, I think Schlegel, their chairman, is pushing back on it publicly for those specific reasons. And that's what gold has a very material advantage of any type of, you know, sovereign entity that wants to get commodity exposure to scarce assets. It's, well, what has the, you know, largest depth? If I want to go liquidate $150 billion, like in their equity exposure, we were just talking about, you know, what market can I do that in and not move it the most from a commodity standpoint? And that's a huge advantage that gold has over time, but it increasingly becomes less and less of an advantage, which is why, you know, I presume that adoption would happen in a much more bottom-up way, which it certainly is. I just didn't expect that some of these top-down ultimately, like there's just this change in the culture of institutional investors that's happening in a significant way.
It's almost like, again, it's polar ends of kind of the I guess the economic spectrum, right? The people that have the least to lose, that are in the worst economic situations, are using it for a variety of reasons. Some just censorship resistance or lack of access to regular banking. But then also at the far other end of the spectrum, you've got the people whose job it is to preserve purchasing power and actually build capital, and those people are cluing in too, and it's like working its way inwards almost. So
you can actually see this at a few levels. Like if you think about strategy, they were a business that could not get ahead, right? So that's a needs-based thing. You can also look at the sovereign level. There's a period where Iran was like 3% of the hash rate, because pick a country that's going to get sanctioned and closed off from the world: Iran, Venezuela, Russia. So you see it on that side of the equation. And then you're right, we're seeing it on the upper end. I think it was Wisconsin, but there was a pension fund that allocated like 100 million. And when you actually, it might be these guys, it could be someone else, but when you actually look at their balance sheet, they were one of the few pension funds, state pension funds, that was like properly backed. They actually had the money that they owe people. So you're seeing the ones that are the most fiscally prudent, and then you're seeing the nations and the companies that needed it. And you're right, it is starting to work towards the middle. It almost reminds me of it's the bell curve meme, right? Where you've got both sides of the spectrum. I think, was it Jesse Myers did that piece on why the yuppie elite don't understand Bitcoin? That's the middle of the bell curve. Like, you can see all these things happening. Bitcoiners, right? I'm sure many Bitcoiners recognize you're probably on one of the two sides of the spectrum. The middle folks just never quite worked it out.
I see that in my daily life with people that I know personally. Very much so.
The bell curve meme is the best meme that's ever been made.
It's right. Yeah.
It's parallel to everything that I ever see ever. And we're going to sandwich out all the middle of the bell curves with Bitcoin.
Bitcoin Well is the best place to be buying and selling Bitcoin in Canada and the US. And now with Bitcoin Well Infinite, it's also the best place to be making large buys at their OTC desk of over $50,000. Their white glove service gives you fast transactions, no slippage, and the lowest fees. You can scan the QR code on the screen or simply head to bitcoinwell.com/BTC Sessions to sign up today. And you can share your own personalized referral link to earn commissions.